Welcome into This Is Baseball. I'm Brandon Johnson, and we're going to do something a little bit different than the normal kind of weekly episode that we put out. I've been wanting to do this subject for a while. I actually thought I was going to do it in the off season because there's plenty of time to get into it, but I think given the just recent incidents regarding umpires around Major League Baseball, I think today it's appropriate to spend some time just talking about umpires and what's the problem with officiating in Major League Baseball, around sports in general, and how can we get to a point where we don't seem to have just constant issues, weekly issues in professional sports with umpires performing poorly or just doing really weird things during games. So that's what I want to do this week. I talked a little bit about it last week. I got into Hunter Wendelstedt ejecting Aaron Boone, New York Yankees manager, 2 batters into a game for something that he didn't even do. And I want to revisit that a little bit because I think we can start there. Like, what went wrong with this situation? How can we fix it in the future? So Hunter Wendelstedt said, hey, that's enough. Because somebody over on the first base side was talking. Hunter Wendelstedt assumed that it was somebody in the Yankees dugout. It wasn't. It was a fan sitting in the first row right above the Yankees dugout that was chirping at Wendelstedt. The fan kept chirping even after Hunter Wendelstedt said, hey, stop, whoever's doing that. And he had enough, so he just turned and ejected Aaron Boone. So Aaron Boone rightfully came out and was like, hey, I didn't say anything. I don't know how you're ejecting me. This doesn't make any sense. And Hunter Wendelstedt basically was like, yeah, I don't care. You're gone. And that to me is the biggest problem in this situation. It's not even that he ejected Aaron Boone. He has the right, he has the authority to eject Aaron Boone, any other member of the coaching staff, any players, any fans. He can do that. The problem is that he felt okay ejecting Aaron Boone without really having enough evidence or doing any sort of investigation to rightfully eject Aaron Boone. And he felt like it was okay to not have that by saying, I don't care, you're done. So I think if you're going to eject somebody from the game, it might be worth doing a replay review and kind of looking into the situation, unless it's just like egregious, it's obvious, that guy's got to go. If it's this player just said something to me on his way back to the dugout that warranted getting tossed, or if it's this pitcher is very clearly intentionally throwing at hitters, or you name it, there's a fight on the field. Those things, obviously, like, if there's a fight on the field, there's going to be a review anyway. But I think the umpires should have got together and said, well, let's hear him out. He's saying he didn't say anything. And that's not typically what a manager would say. They'd usually own it and then just, really double down and get in the umpire's face and like really get their money's worth for being ejected that day. And yeah, the umpires should have been like, let's look at this. Let's see what happened. And if they would have done that, they would have been like, oh, that fan was the one saying something. And then maybe the Yankee Stadium staff just move that fan to a seat further away. Or they say, hey, you got to stop or you got to go. It's up to you. And it reminds me of the NBA. which I actually think the NBA has probably the best officials in sports in North America, at least. So I'm a Dallas Mavericks fan, and game 2 of the first round of the playoffs was last week sometime. And Mavericks are playing the Clippers. So at one point, Russell Westbrook is contesting a Luka Doncic three-point attempt. And Russell Westbrook comes down on top of Luka, knocks Luka over. Luka might have sold a little bit, but the refs stop the game and say, this play is under further review for a potential hostile act. So they do the review, they look at it, and instead of, in the moment, teeing up Westbrook, they look at it and go, you know what? There's really nothing here. It was incidental contact. Play on. A little bit later in the game, more Russell Westbrook, Luka Doncic interactions. Russell Westbrook once again defending Luka, and he gets tied up, kind of hooks Luka's arm and then throws him. They stop the game. Russell Westbrook gets mad, starts pushing, throws a punch at PJ Washington, and they're like, all right, got it. The refs again. All right, this plays under further review for potential hostile act. They review it and are like, all right, double technical on Russell Westbrook. He's got to go. PJ Washington, technical. This is your second technical of the game. You're gone too. And they did the review, removed the players, or made the right calls that needed to be called. This game was already super chippy anyway. If you follow the NBA at all, you know that there's a lot of history between the Mavericks and Clippers in recent years in the playoffs. And so the refs were kind of on high alert anyway. But the point is, they didn't just make instant decisions. They looked into it and were like, all right, here's what needs to happen. Let's do that. And nobody thought, wow, that's the wrong thing to do here. Like, they did a proper investigation. And I think that's just what should have happened with this Aaron Boone, Hunter Wendelstedt situation. I don't think an umpire should be that comfortable just tossing somebody. I don't think you can be that quick on the trigger to get rid of somebody in a situation, especially where you know you don't know the whole story. But Hunter Wendelstedt isn't the only umpire that has been under scrutiny this year. There have been Angel Hernandez, obviously, is probably the most well-known umpire. And if you're an umpire, a ref, whatever, you shouldn't be well-known by the league that you work for. And Angel Hernandez is just constantly in the baseball news cycle of, here is a terrible call that Angel Hernandez had while he was calling balls and strikes today. CB Buckner, maybe not quite as well known, but he's right up there with Angel Hernandez for very poor performance behind the plate. And if you are ever interested in seeing how these umpires perform, there is a website, umpirescorecards.com, where you can look at pretty much any game you want and see how umpires are performing. There's a Twitter handle. It's at umpscorecards on Twitter, and they put out the grades for balls and strikes for every game if you're interested, and you can just see how good or how bad a certain umpire is. And honestly, there's a lot of umpires that are really good at their job, and the ump scorecards actually show that. And then it also shows this ump was really bad today. He was, 80% accurate. Here are some critical calls that he missed with balls and strikes. And it kind of breaks that down if you're into some advanced analytics. And I think along with the umpire scorecards, every broadcast in the last 15 years or so has added a virtual strike zone, the box that you see whenever the game is going on. And it's pretty accurate, but I think having that information sometimes maybe does more harm than good, because it really highlights like, okay, this umpire is having a really bad day, or, oh, this umpire is actually having a really great day. But I think umpire scorecards, all of the access that we now have, we have social media where if an umpire does something silly, it's going to be all over social media and everybody's going to react to it. And it's just this big explosion. And it doesn't mean that umpires are like just have been bad in the last 5-10 years. It just means that now we all see that, oh wow, we have a problem here and it needs to be fixed. But thinking about the strike zone is definitely an interesting subject, because it's really kind of based on a batter's stance. So let me get into the definition. Now, this is straight from MLB.com. The official strike zone is the area over home plate from the midpoint between a batter's shoulders and the top of the uniform pants, when the batter is in his stance and he prepared to swing at a pitched ball, and a point just below the kneecap. In order to get a strike call, part of the ball must cross over part of home plate while in the aforementioned area. So basically shoulders to knees. Now, obviously, if a batter is taller or stands taller, he's going to have a bigger strike zone than somebody that's shorter or is a little bit more kind of closed or knelt down in their batter stance. So it's definitely like, in a way, there's kind of, it varies from batter to batter just based off of what their stance is, but it should be the same, like obviously shoulders to knees. And for me, as somebody that watches the game, I've always been okay with, as long as they're consistently calling something a ball or a strike, then it is what it is. So even if so for example, if an umpire is calling an inside pitch a strike, but if you're watching it on the broadcast and it looks like a ball, but he keeps calling it a strike, by definition, it's not a strike, but he's been calling it a strike all night. I think as a hitter, you should adjust to that and know, okay, he's calling these inside pitches. I need to be ready for that and make sure that I'm attacking those so I don't get rung up on an inside pitch and get mad about it. So should that happen? No, you shouldn't have to adjust from game to game because different umpires call different pitches, strikes and balls. Now, again, consistency is really what you want here. Last week, Juan Soto, Yankees, saw 7 pitches. Not one of them were a strike. He struck out looking. They were all outside the zone, and none of them were borderline balls or strikes. It was like, okay, those are obviously, this pitcher has hit everything but the strike zone, and he's getting rewarded because this umpire is essentially blind. So that leads me to my next point, which is the automated strike zone or the robotic strike zone. So a lot of people have been calling for an automated strike zone because it's a way to have balls and strikes called correctly, consistently. So in the minor leagues right now, they've been testing it out. It's called the ABS system, automated ball strike system. And they're doing 2 different things. On certain days, they are literally having the ABS system call balls and strikes, and there's still an umpire behind the plate. The umpire's job is to just relay what the ABS system calls the pitch. So if ABS system says strike, he calls it a strike, regardless of how he feels about where the pitch crossed home plate. If it's a ball, he calls it a ball. Simple as that. On other days, the umpires will be still calling balls and strikes, but the batter, pitcher, or catcher can appeal the strike call. And if they appeal, then the ABS system will then rule on whether the call stands or is overturned. And each team would get 3 unsuccessful challenges per game. And then if you have a successful challenge, it doesn't count toward the total. So all challenges must be made within 2 seconds of that call. And this source is from baseballamerica.com. So they're trying things out, and I think eventually the plan, maybe as early as next year, is to be able to implement something like this into the major league level. I don't know if it'll be the ABS system just entirely taking over balls and strikes, or if it'll be the challenge system where you have the ABS system come in after there's a challenge. I'm kind of leaning towards the idea that it might be the challenge system because, I mean, they have just in the last 15 years, MLB has implemented obviously instant replay and challenges in general. Balls and strikes has been something that is just untouchable. If it's a ball, it's a ball. If it's a strike, it's a strike. I don't care how bad it is. And if you argue with the umpire, you're out of here. So I think they would jump towards doing the challenge system first. Like, hey, I disagree with that call, and go from there. See how productive that is to making the game a better place. I think with some of the umpires that are behind the plate, you're going to run out of challenges really quickly, but you're also going to have to be strategic about when you would challenge these pitches. So, yeah, we don't quite know if and when that's going to even be at the major league level. Hopefully it's next year, but I think right now, in the meantime, the league needs to do something to hold the umpires more accountable. Because right now it seems like, oh, the umpire has a bad game, players get mad about it, fans get mad about it, and then nothing happens. Like, again, not to pick on Angel Hernandez, but he's kind of done this to himself. We've known he's bad for years. Nothing seems to get done. How can somebody like Angel Hernandez that is very obviously bad at his job, how does he continue to get the opportunity to be a Major League Baseball umpire? Well, the umpires, like the players, have a union that protects them. And that's really the simple answer is they don't really have consequences for performing poorly. Now, the league says that they do discipline umpires, but they also say that they understand that you can't have perfection, which I agree with. I'm not expecting the umpires to be perfect. We don't expect the players to be perfect. If we did, then everybody would bat 1,000 and we wouldn't be okay with, the old, 3 out of 10 is good. So I think there needs to at least be like a threshold of 90% accuracy or something, maybe even higher. It's like, this is what you need to do. And what do Major League Baseball teams do with players that are underperforming? If they have options, they send them to the minors and say, hey, you're not hitting right now. We're going to send you down to the minors. We're going to get you hooked up with our development team down there. We're going to work through your problems here and hopefully get you back up here as soon as we can. And that's the goal. I think the player that really comes to mind when I think about that is Mike Moustakas for the Royals in 2014. He had a horrendous start to the year. Royals sent him down. He worked on some things down there, and he was back up, and he was a big part of the Royals championship run. Why can't we do the same thing with umpires? You already reward umpires the ability or the opportunity to officiate the postseason based off of performance and merit. So why can't we go to the other end and say, hey, Angel Hernandez, you have been a 79% accuracy behind the plate over the last, 4 games rather, I think we need to send you down to the minor leagues so you can work on your balls and strikes and work on your consistency of getting calls correct. I think that should happen. I just don't think that we can essentially have umpires really performing poorly at their jobs, but really going unchecked when they do it. There's no consequences to your performance. And I think it might be time for the league to look into that, along with looking at other ways to improve the game and give the players the best opportunity to perform at a high level with consistent accuracy, and give the fans a good product on the field that they feel has integrity and can feel confident that they're watching a good product. So we'll just kind of see how this all plays out. Thank you for listening this week. I know a little bit different than what we typically do here, but just thought it was important to dive into this and really kind of give my thoughts on what I've felt not only a month through the season, but really for years. Just kind of put my thoughts on an episode here. But I will catch you next week. See you then.